Hey guys, got a fun video for you this week. Hopefully it'll be short too. We're going to be driving this thing for really the first time. I mean, we drove it, I guess, maybe a minute in last week's video, but actually put some miles on it. So we mess with the brakes again, because that's what I do. Finish up just a bunch of little things. I got the center console and the interior kind of put back together. I got an alignment, so that drives good. We mess with the exhaust a little bit more. Still not happy with that, but it is what it is. And do a few other little odds and ends. And I think we're getting close to, at least for now, with me being done with this car for a little bit. So anyway, I wish I had a ton more video to show you of driving the car around, but it's just me really. So I will upload and show you guys a little bit that I have, and we'll go from there. So anyway, if you're still watching this series, I appreciate it. And the brakes were dragging a little bit on the front. If you unplug this, then they would release enough and not drag, but the car was getting hot. The brakes were getting hot. The car wouldn't roll. So I had not modified the length of this, and I'd like to not, just for safety's sake, but obviously need to move this out. So I put 2 washers on all 4 studs. I don't love that, the look of it, but I think it's the right way to go versus having to take this all apart and shorten up this nut or cut the stud down to make everything shorter. I think just spacing this out is the safer and obviously the easier way to go. So they don't drag now. The pedal gets a little bit closer to the floor when you're braking, so you can actually heel toe a little bit. You got to use the tip of your foot for the brake and then your heel for the gas. But before, when the brakes were engaged all the way at the top, you had too much gap and you couldn't heel toe at all. So it's actually a little bit better now. So anyway, I just wanted to post about that. I think the brakes are good. The rears seem to work. So they had a little bit of temperature, and I hard stomped it a couple times, and the brakes are pretty good. I'm assuming they would be good if you beat on it with the solid rotors, but I'm guessing these brakes probably work better than the stock brakes with that extra, probably extra pressure from this updated system. So, but yeah, I think after the 86th time of working with the brakes, I think they're fixed. So anyway, I'll stop. I remade this upper radiator hose, sorry, there. I don't love how it looks, but it gives me plenty of clearance there, so that's gonna have to work. Had to move this, found this little crappy bracket. Yeah, might rub a little bit there, but we'll see once it gets hot, and it'll be fine. So put some more coolant back in it and see what this does. Hopefully you can hear me. So the little bit I've been driving this thing, it started puking out of the diff. It left a pretty big spot on the ground after 15 or 20 miles of driving this thing. So I thought maybe the seal was leaking, but it was, I don't know if you can tell, but it was leaking like from the top, like above this brace. And the only thing up there, and it looked dry back here, so the only thing up there is the vent, which, yeah, you can't see it, but you know where it is. It's up there. So I'm like, well, why would it be puking out of the vent? So then I pulled the fill plug, and this thing was way overfilled. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I'll make a huge mess here. But yeah, it had way too much fluid in it. So I checked it before I drove it to make sure there was fluid in it, and it started coming out a little bit. And I'm like, okay, well, there's fluid in it, but I should have checked the level. So anyway, hopefully that fixes it. I'm gonna clean it up and shove it back together. I think I talked about it before, but the car was missing these brackets that hold the hood down. My buddy John from Tinker Engineering had some spares, so got those this week. I still couldn't get this thing to work right. Come to find out, the lever inside the car wasn't bolted into the correct holes, and so then the cable wasn't moving correctly to pull this down. So anyway, make a couple adjustments on these stops. This one fits good over here. That one needs to pull down a little bit further, so I'll move that bracket that way just a little bit, and that'll take care of that, and I can move on to another problem. Pretty happy with the hood fitment. It's not perfect, but the gap is pretty good. I can't bring it down too much more because of that molding. I don't know technically if, I'm assuming maybe the door should be a little bit further forward based on this gap, and then the hood could be further forward, but I'm not making all those adjustments. That gap's probably a little bit tight, so it would make sense, but I'm not a body man, so that's just staying how it is. And then kind of the same on this over here. It's pretty good, so we're gonna leave that alone. I just made a couple adjustments with those brackets I installed, and I just random bolt down the hinges when I put the hood back on. But other than that, we're gonna leave that. Look at the wipers.
Out driving. I bumped the idle up so it's not wanting to stall. The brakes I got fixed. It's not overheating. Drives pretty straight. So yeah, it's exciting.
I got the interior mostly put back together. The center console is kind of a disaster from I'm assuming the previous owner that installed this aftermarket HVAC system and this vent. There was no place for the hazard switch, so it's just kind of hanging out there. There was an aftermarket panel that fit down here that he made out of wood that was all cracked up. This isn't ideal either, but this has to be a little bit further forward due to the location of the shifter. So it's just in there now and it's presentable, but the radio needs wired back up and nothing is done with this, but it's just going to be what it's going to be for right now. Maybe we'll come back at another point and get that all going. I'm kind of in OT with this. I have a bunch of hours in this car if you haven't noticed, and I'm sure the owner wants to drive a little bit, and I'd like to have my garage spot back for a little bit. So yeah, anyway, it's pretty sharp. I didn't get to the door seals or anything like that, but we did get an alignment on it. The drive straight, tires are straight, all that fun stuff. So anyway, I thought I'd show you that. Also guys, on the interior, I forgot to mention that I got all the gauges working. Well, most of the gauges work. The tachometer I finally got working. I ended up using the MSD 8920. That is powered versus the passive one from, I don't know, that other company, the little baby one that I wired in line. That I couldn't get to work. So anyway, MSD 8920. When you just run that on the inside, power and ground, and then in and out from the tach wire to the tachometer, and now it works fine. And I did order the Speed Hut GPS cable driven unit. I just haven't got that installed yet, but anyway, I thought I'd mention that when I was talking about the interior. I don't know if you've watched any of my videos, you kind of know I like doing things multiple times. Anyway, the exhaust is too loud in this, at least for me, and I'm assuming for the owner of the car. It's not bad at idle and like light throttle, but it's pretty angry acting under like moderate and wide open throttle, pretty raspy. So I initially thought about welding in a cat, but there really isn't a good spot up there with room for it without lowering the exhaust and redoing a bunch of stuff. So I bought one of these, and the name is escaping me. I'll put it in the text in the video when I edit it, but I've used these a couple times in other cars and they work pretty well. They're kind of adjustable. You can buy them in 2 and 3 disc, and then they come with these caps. I tacked this open one in on the front side, but they also come with a cap that you can block off the rear one completely. I'm not going to go to that extent yet. I think I'll put this in there, see how it is, and if it's still too loud, then I'll tack in the cap on the end, and that would block all the flow, or most of the flow through the center of this thing. My idea is to insert it here, but since I'm a very poor welder, I had to come in with this guy, grind all the welds. Since I welded the V-bands on the inside instead of the outside, I had to come in through here and knock all that down. But anyway, this will go in there. Alright, I lied. I decided to put a couple tacks on it. It was super loose and I don't want it to rattle, so tack it in place. Worst case, I can grind this back out of there. So anyway, but that's what it looks like. So we'll see what it sounds like with it back together. Finally decided this thing was worthy of a bath. Put maybe 30 minutes of drive time on it today. Pretty excited about working a bunch of the bugs out. Brakes are working. I bumped the idle up to get it to idle. I don't know if that's the fix, but I don't know if it's the supercharger and the flywheel or what, but it seems to run fine, except at idle. I smoke tested it. It seems to run fine, so I just bumped the set screw up on the throttle to bring the idle up. It idles around 1,000, which is probably too much, but I'm just going to leave that for now. But yeah, the rear tires on the inside rub a little bit, so under heavy cornering, but other than that, things are working well. I decided to clean the engine bay up just a little bit. I got some taillight gaskets. Those are probably full of water now that I washed it. But yeah, I think it's a sharp car. It's pretty fun to drive. Its power is about, I think, what I expected. The exhaust isn't perfect. It's got a buzzy vibration, raspy around 3,200, but normal driving, you don't notice it. I think it's just gonna have to be that way if the owner wants to take it to an exhaust shop and maybe have a cat welded in or something. That would probably knock down the vibration or the resonance. It could use a bigger flex pipe maybe. That might help some, because it seems to vibrate through the car a little bit. I don't know if it's those hangers I use or what. If I get a little bit extra time, I might mess with that. But anyway, I'll stop rambling and put a little bit more work into this thing. But obviously it could use a bunch more things, but I don't think that's going to be something I'm going to tackle, at least for now. I need to get this thing maybe out of my garage for a little bit and back to the owner so he can enjoy it, hopefully a little bit this summer. So anyway, if you're watching, I appreciate it, and hopefully this series has helped some of you guys out. I'll maybe post a little bit more, but like I say, I think we're coming to a little bit of a closure here. So anyway, thanks again.